More than 72% of California households are now reporting that their monthly expenses increased in 2026, and here's the shocking part. Most people don't even know why. What if the real reason isn't just inflation, but a series of new revenue laws quietly pulling money out of your pocket every single day? From your electricity bill to the fuel you pump, something bigger is happening behind the scenes. Experts and recent economic reports suggest that these changes are not random. They are part of a growing system where traditional taxes are being replaced with less visible, harder-to-track costs. Most residents never realize how much they are actually paying over time. That's how billions are being collected, silently. So the real question is, how much are you losing without even noticing? In this video, we'll uncover 10 powerful reasons behind these rising costs, and what you can do before it's too late. Number 1. Hidden fees are quietly replacing traditional taxes. Here's where things start to get really concerning. In 2026, instead of increasing obvious taxes that people would immediately notice and react to, many systems have shifted toward something far less visible: hidden fees. These are small charges that appear on your bills under names like service adjustment, processing fee, compliance charge, or even administrative cost. At first glance, they seem harmless, just a few extra dollars here and there. But when you add them up across your electricity bill, your internet, your rent, your insurance, and even your everyday purchases, the total becomes shockingly high. Research in behavioral economics shows that people are far less likely to question small, scattered costs compared to one large tax increase. And that's exactly why this system works so effectively. Instead of announcing a big tax hike, costs are being distributed across multiple touchpoints in your daily life, making them harder to track and easier to ignore. It's like a slow leak in your wallet. You don't feel it immediately, but over time, it drains a significant amount. What makes this even more powerful is the lack of transparency. Many of these fees are not clearly explained, and in some cases, they're buried deep in the fine print. So unless you actively review every detail of your monthly bills, you might never realize how much you're actually paying. This shift is not accidental. It's a strategic move to increase revenue without triggering public backlash. So what can you do? Start by carefully reviewing your bills line by line. Look for unfamiliar charges, question anything that seems vague, and compare your current statements with older ones. Awareness is your first defense, because once you see it, you can't ignore it. If you've ever spotted a strange fee on your bill, comment "hidden fees" below. I want to see how many people are noticing this. We put real effort into exposing things like this, so subscribe now. It's just one click and it truly helps us keep going. Number 2. Fuel and transportation costs are quietly rising. Now let's talk about something almost everyone feels daily, but very few fully understand: fuel and transportation costs. In 2026, many California residents are noticing that every trip to the gas station feels more expensive. But here's the twist: it's not just global oil prices. A large part of this increase is coming from policy-driven charges, environmental fees, and transportation-related revenue laws that are being added step by step. You might think you're just paying for fuel, but in reality, you're also paying for carbon programs, infrastructure funding, road maintenance fees, and emissions-related costs. These charges are often built into the price per gallon, making them nearly invisible. And because they are included in the final price, most drivers assume it's just market fluctuation, when in fact, it's a structured system of added costs. Research shows that transportation policies aimed at reducing emissions often lead to higher short-term costs for consumers, especially those who rely heavily on daily driving. That means commuters, delivery workers, and even families running basic errands are all being impacted. And it doesn't stop at fuel. Toll systems, parking fees, vehicle usage charges, and even urban congestion pricing are expanding, creating a layered cost structure that keeps growing over time. The result? You're not just paying more to drive, you're paying more to live your daily life. Every school drop-off, every grocery run, every commute becomes slightly more expensive, and those small increases add up faster than most people expect. So what can you do right now? Start tracking how much you spend on transportation weekly. Look for patterns. Consider small changes like combining trips, optimizing routes, or exploring alternative options where possible. Because once you become aware of where your money is going, you gain back a level of control. Number 3. Housing-related charges are expanding faster than ever. Now here's where the pressure becomes impossible to ignore: housing. In 2026, it's not just rent or mortgage payments going up, it's everything around it. Many California residents are now facing a wave of additional housing-related charges that weren't as noticeable before. These include local levies, property-related fees, maintenance surcharges, inspection costs, and regulatory compliance charges, all quietly adding to your monthly burden. For renters, this often shows up as adjusted rent structures or new line items in lease agreements. Landlords, facing their own rising costs due to updated regulations and property requirements, are passing these expenses directly to tenants. So even if your base rent looks stable, your total monthly payment keeps creeping up. And for homeowners, it's a similar story: higher property-related expenses, insurance adjustments, and local fees tied to community upgrades or infrastructure projects. Studies on housing markets consistently show that when policies increase operational costs for property owners, those costs rarely stay at the top, they flow downward to residents. That means whether you rent or own, you're likely paying more than you realize. And the most frustrating part? Many of these charges are hidden within complex documents or bundled into broader categories, making them difficult to track unless you're actively looking. Picture this: you sign a lease thinking you understand your monthly cost, but over time, small additions start appearing: $25 here, $40 there. It doesn't feel like much in the moment, but over a year, it can turn into hundreds or even thousands of dollars extra. So what should you do? Always read your lease or property statements carefully, ask questions about unclear charges, and compare your current costs with previous months. Because in this environment, what you don't question can cost you the most. Number 4. Utility bills now include infrastructure recovery fees. Now let's look at something almost every household pays every month: utility bills. Electricity, water, and gas used to feel predictable. But in 2026, many residents are opening their bills and noticing something strange. The total is higher, even when usage hasn't changed much. That's because a new layer of charges, often labeled as infrastructure recovery fees, grid improvement costs, or system upgrades, is quietly being added. On the surface, these charges are explained as necessary investments. Aging power grids, water systems, and energy networks require upgrades, especially with growing populations and environmental pressures. And while that may be true, the way these costs are being recovered is what's catching people off guard. Instead of being funded through visible public budgets, they are increasingly being shifted directly onto consumers through monthly bills. What makes this even more impactful is how subtle it is. Your bill might show a small increase, maybe $10 or $20 more than usual. But over time, those increases stack up. And because they are listed under complex or technical names, most people don't question them. It creates a situation where you're paying more, but without fully understanding what you're paying for. Studies in public utility economics suggest that spreading infrastructure costs across millions of users is one of the most efficient ways to fund large projects. But for individuals, it means long-term, continuous increases that don't go away after one payment. They become part of your new normal. So what can you do? Start comparing your bills month to month. Look beyond just usage. Focus on the line items. If something is unclear, don't hesitate to contact your provider and ask for a breakdown. Because when it comes to utilities, small unnoticed charges can turn into long-term financial pressure. Number 5. Digital transactions are being taxed more than ever. Now here's something most people don't even think about. Every time you tap your card, pay online, or renew a subscription, you could be paying more than you realize. In 2026, the digital economy has become one of the biggest targets for new revenue systems.
Why?
Because almost everything we do today, shopping, streaming, food delivery, banking, happens digitally. And that makes it the perfect place to quietly introduce additional charges. These costs don't always show up as a clear tax. Instead, they appear as service fees, platform charges, transaction costs, or digital compliance fees. For example, your favorite streaming service might increase by a few dollars. A food delivery app might add a small service adjustment. Even online payments can include hidden processing fees. Individually, they feel insignificant, but collectively, they create a constant flow of extra spending. Economic studies show that consumers are less likely to notice increases in automated or recurring payments. Once a subscription is active, most people rarely check it again. And that's where the system becomes powerful. Small increases spread across multiple platforms can quietly add up to hundreds of dollars per year without triggering alarm. Think about how many subscriptions or apps you're paying for right now. Streaming, cloud storage, delivery services, digital tools, it adds up quickly. And with new policies and regulations increasing costs for digital platforms, many companies are simply passing those costs on to you. So what's the smart move? Take a few minutes to audit your digital expenses. Cancel anything you don't use, review your subscriptions, and keep track of recurring charges. Because in a world where everything is automated, awareness is the only way to stay in control. Number 6. Small business costs are being passed directly to you. Now let's talk about something that affects you every single day, the rising cost of everyday goods and services. In 2026, many small businesses are facing increased operational expenses due to new regulations, compliance requirements, licensing fees, and higher service costs. But here's the key detail most people miss. Businesses don't absorb these costs, they pass them on to you. Think about your daily routine. That morning coffee, your grocery run, a haircut, a quick meal. Prices seem slightly higher than before. Not dramatically, but just enough to feel uncomfortable. That's because small businesses, already operating on tight margins, are adjusting their prices to survive. When they face new fees or increased costs behind the scenes, the easiest and often only solution is to raise prices for customers. Economic research consistently shows that when regulatory or operational costs increase, businesses respond by shifting that burden downstream. And because these increases happen across multiple sectors at the same time, the effect compounds. You're not just paying more in one place, you're paying more everywhere you go. What makes this situation more complex is that it doesn't feel like a direct tax. You don't see a bill labeled "new law cost." Instead, it shows up as a $1 increase here, a $2 bump there. Over weeks and months, those small differences quietly build into a significant financial impact on your lifestyle. So what can you do? Start being more aware of price changes. Compare costs, support businesses that offer fair pricing, and adjust spending habits where possible. Because understanding this chain reaction helps you realize that your spending power is directly connected to these hidden shifts in the system. Number 7. Vehicle ownership is becoming more expensive than ever. Owning a car in 2026 isn't just about buying fuel anymore. It's becoming a full financial commitment loaded with hidden and expanding costs. Many California residents are now realizing that simply keeping a vehicle on the road is getting more expensive year after year. But the real reason isn't just inflation. It's the growing number of vehicle-related fees, compliance costs, and regulatory charges that are being added quietly. First, there's registration and renewal fees, which in many cases have increased or include new add-ons tied to environmental and infrastructure programs. Then comes insurance, which is rising due to stricter requirements and broader coverage mandates. On top of that, there are inspection fees, emissions compliance costs, and even penalties for not meeting certain standards. Each of these may seem manageable alone, but together they create a system where owning a car feels like a monthly expense machine. What's even more impactful is the shift toward policies encouraging reduced car usage. While these policies aim to support environmental goals, they often result in higher costs for those who still rely on personal vehicles, especially commuters and families. Some areas are even exploring usage-based charges, where the more you drive, the more you pay. That means your daily routine, going to work, dropping kids off, running errands, could directly increase your financial burden. Research into transportation economics shows that as governments transition towards sustainable models, the cost burden often shifts to current vehicle owners during the transition period. And that's exactly what many people are experiencing right now. So what's the smart move? Start calculating your total cost of ownership, not just fuel. Track insurance, maintenance, fees, and unexpected costs. Because once you see the full picture, you can make smarter decisions, whether that's optimizing usage or exploring alternative. Number 8. Penalties and fines are quietly increasing across the board. Now here's something that catches people completely off guard. Penalties and fines are rising, and they're becoming a major source of revenue. In 2026, many residents are noticing that even minor mistakes, like a small traffic violation, a parking error, or missing a deadline, can now lead to much higher fines than before. But this isn't random. It's part of a broader shift where enforcement systems are becoming more structured and, in many cases, more financially impactful. Think about it. A simple parking ticket that used to cost a small amount can now feel like a serious hit to your wallet. Late fees, administrative penalties, and added charges can quickly stack on top of the original fine. And because these penalties are often tied to automated systems, like cameras, digital monitoring, and online processing, more people are being caught and charged without even interacting with an officer directly. Studies in public policy suggest that fines have increasingly become a dual-purpose tool, not just to enforce rules, but also to generate steady revenue. And while the intention may be to improve compliance, the reality is that it places a heavier burden on everyday individuals, especially those who may not be fully aware of updated rules or changes. What makes this even more challenging is how quickly these costs escalate. Miss a payment deadline, and the fine can double. Ignore a notice, and additional penalties are added. Before you know it, a small issue turns into a significant financial problem. So what can you do? Stay informed about local rules, pay attention to deadlines, and handle any notices immediately. Because in today's system, small mistakes can become expensive very fast if you're not careful. Have you ever been hit with a fine that felt way too high? Comment "Fine Alert" below. I want to hear your story. We put real effort into exposing these issues, so subscribe now. It's just one click and helps us keep you informed. Number 9. Emergency policies are quietly becoming permanent. Now here's one of the most overlooked but powerful shifts happening in 2026. Policies that were introduced as temporary emergency measures are no longer temporary. Many of these charges, fees, and adjustments were originally presented as short-term solutions during crises, whether economic, environmental, or infrastructure-related. But instead of disappearing once the situation stabilized, they are now being extended, rebranded, or quietly made permanent. At first, people accepted these changes because they were told it was necessary, for now. And during uncertain times, that makes sense. But what most residents didn't realize is how easily a temporary charge can become part of the system. A small fee added during an emergency becomes normalized over time. Then, instead of removing it, it gets absorbed into the standard cost structure, often with little public attention. Research in policy behavior shows that once a cost is introduced and widely adopted, it becomes extremely difficult to remove.
Why?
Because systems, budgets, and expectations adjust around that revenue. Governments and institutions begin to depend on that income, turning what was once temporary into something long-term. The real issue here is awareness. Many people don't track when a policy starts or when it was supposed to end. So when it continues, it doesn't feel like a change, it just feels like the way things are. But over time, these temporary costs stack on top of each other, creating a permanent increase in your financial burden. So what should you do? Pay attention to timelines. When you hear about a new, temporary charge, follow up months later. Ask, is it still there? Has it increased? Because in today's system, nothing disappears unless people notice and question it. Number 10. Inflation policy changes double financial pressure. Now here's the final and most powerful reason why so many people feel financially squeezed in 2026, and it's the combination effect. It's not just inflation. And it's not just new revenue laws. It's what happens when both hit at the same time. This creates a kind of double financial pressure that quietly drains your income from multiple directions. Let's break it down. Inflation naturally increases the cost of goods and services, food, fuel, housing, utilities. That's already difficult. But on top of that, when new policies introduce additional fees, charges, and cost adjustments, those increases stack on top of inflation, not replace it. So instead of one wave of rising costs, you're facing two overlapping waves, and that's why everything suddenly feels more expensive, even if your income hasn't changed. Economic research calls this a compound effect, where multiple financial pressures combine to create a much larger impact than each would individually. For example, your grocery bill goes up due to inflation, but at the same time, transportation costs rise due to policy changes, which then increases delivery and supply costs, pushing prices even higher. It becomes a chain reaction that touches almost every part of your life. And here's the hardest part, because these increases come from different sources, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly why your expenses are rising. It just feels like everything is getting out of control. So what can you do? Start by building awareness. Track your monthly spending, identify patterns, and adjust your budget where possible. Even small changes can help you regain control. Because in a system like this, understanding the pressure is the first step to managing it. Do you feel like everything is getting expensive at once? Comment double pressure if you're feeling it too. We put real effort into breaking this down for you. So subscribe now. It's just one click and helps us keep bringing you the truth. So here's the reality. What we're seeing in 2026 isn't just a normal rise in costs. It's a systematic shift in how money is being collected, and most people are experiencing it without fully realizing what's happening. From hidden fees and rising fuel costs to expanding housing charges, digital transaction increases, and higher penalties, every part of daily life is being touched in some way. And when you combine all of this with ongoing inflation, it creates a powerful financial pressure that's hard to escape. But here's the important part: you're not powerless. The biggest advantage you have right now is awareness. Once you start paying attention to where your money is going, everything begins to change. You start noticing patterns. You question charges. You make smarter decisions. And over time, those small actions can protect you from losing hundreds or even thousands of dollars without realizing it. Think about it. How many of these changes had you already noticed before watching this video? And how many were happening silently in the background? That's exactly why staying informed is no longer optional. It's essential. Moving forward, make it a habit to review your bills, track your expenses, and stay updated on new policies that could affect your finances. Because in today's world, the difference between struggling and staying in control often comes down to what you know and how you respond. This isn't about fear, it's about being prepared. And the more informed you are, the better positioned you'll be to protect your money, your lifestyle, and your future.